think we will get started. We do have a board meeting after this, so we have plenty of time though. So I'm Lynn Coda, I'm the superintendent for Franklin Northeast. We are going to be talking about the Enosburg-Richford budget, the ERUUSD school district budget for this next year. So Morgan Daybell, our chief financial officer, is going to be helping tonight with this budget presentation. He's actually doing a good chunk of it as it relates to the money issues for our district. So I just want to start by saying a little bit about the Enosburg-Richford district. So we have a lot to celebrate in FNESU, and it looks like you have your annual report in front of you. One of the first pages has a page for celebrations, and I'll just highlight, because we're here in Enosburg, I'll highlight some of the Enosburg specific celebrations. So we had our varsity baseball team, a state finalist this last year. The girls volleyball team, also a state finalist. And this year, the Vermont soccer officials gave out their first ever inaugural Vermont Soccer Officials Premier Sportsmanship recipient, and that went to Enosburg Soccer. We also have, we're happy about the drama programs that we have been able to bring back in FNESU, and this past year we had 2 productions connected to our 2 high schools. We had 1 acts that were performed last spring at Richford Junior Senior High School, and this past fall we had a production at Enosburg High School, Once Upon a Mattress. And students from both schools are participating in those. We also had several of our educators that are connected to our Enosburg schools receive some of the educator awards this year. So Maggie Cavazos, who was the Flexible Pathways coordinator last year at Enosburg, received an Above and Beyond award. Also Bev Mayat from Enosburg Elementary School, Above and Beyond award. Brenna Sturdivant, the Enosburg Middle High School school counselor, received one of those awards as well. And I think that we had several individual student recognitions. So Miley Decker from Enosburg Falls Middle High School won the championships for the Rail Jam in 2025 for snowboarding. Annabelle Elwood received the UVM Green and Gold Scholar. I'll just mention the Richford Green and Gold Scholar, Tristan Whitestone, who also attends Cold Hollow, I believe. He did, okay. And then we have from Cold Hollow, James St. Pierre placed first in motorcycle repair in Skills USA. And then, can't read that from there. Brody Wells won the 2025 championship in the 200 meter for track and field, and he took second in the 100 meter. So lots to celebrate with our schools, with our staff, and with our students. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about our VT-CAP. This is our statewide assessment results. So this is data that compares how FNESU is doing compared to the average in the state of Vermont. We are seeing growth in where our students are performing. We are not at the level we want to be yet, but we're happy with the growth that we are seeing. So we are seeing that at the 3rd grade level, we're approaching that statewide average, and by the time our students get to 9th grade, they're very close to that statewide average. We have some other grade levels that we're relatively close, and others that there is a bit of a distance there. We're putting a lot of time and effort into our literacy instruction, into literacy professional learning for our educators, and we've also invested in new literacy programs at all levels for our students in pre-K through 8. So with all we're doing to support that work and the work we're doing within our system that supports students with intervention and enrichment, we feel confident that we will continue to see growth and see our students get up to and hopefully exceed what those statewide averages are. This is the VT-CAP math assessment data. We're very happy with how our 3rd grade students did. They were 9 percentage points above the statewide average. Similar to literacy, we have done a lot of professional learning with our educators. We're working on the interventions and the types of supports our students receive when they need additional time. And you can see that we're very close to the statewide average in most all of those measures across the grade levels. So we will continue working on making that progress, and our ultimate goal is to exceed that statewide average to get our students to proficiency. I want to talk just for a moment about this side of the supervisory union. So in the Enosburg-Richford district, we have 5 schools. We operate 2 pre-K through 5 schools. So we've color-coded it by their school colors. At Richford Elementary, we have 166 students. At Enosburg Elementary School, we have 246 students. We also operate 2 6 through 12 high schools, middle high schools. Richford Junior Senior High School has 219 students. Enosburg Middle High School has 439 students. Cold Hollow, the majority of the students that they have here at Cold Hollow attend Enosburg High School. 93 of those students are from Enosburg. 30 of those students are from Richford Junior Senior High School. And there are 14 students who are coming to Cold Hollow from outside of our supervisory union.
So we start the budget discussions each year first with a look at enrollment data, enrollment trends. So on October 1st, we had just over 1,000 kids in our 4 schools. This is counting Cold Hollow students in the high school that they're assigned to. And that number is projected to be relatively steady across the next 5 years, which is the 5 columns on the right side of this going out to 2031. If you go to the next slide, Courtney, we'll see the same information but in a graph. And so you can see that at our 2 elementary schools, kind of anticipating a slight decline over the next 5 years, the 2 high schools being relatively flat. And it's important to put this in the statewide context, where as a state, we've been seeing a pretty dramatic decline in the number of kids that we're educating in our schools. That is not the experience that we have in Enosburg-Richford, in Franklin Northeast, really in Franklin County and Chittenden County in general. So as we talk about some of the changes that are coming, and a lot of that is tied to this decreasing student count, just keep in mind that the experience that we have here is very different than the experience in a lot of places in the state. At the annual meeting, when you vote, the first 3 articles are to elect the officers of the district. There are 3 school board seats that are up this year. Each one has 1 candidate running, but all 3 will take write-in candidates if folks are interested in that. There is 1 seat for someone from Enosburg, 2 seats for people from Richford this time around. Anyone in either town should vote for all the seats there. You don't have to vote just for the people who are running from a town that you live in. The next article on the meeting warning is the one that the board is looking for authority to spend a certain amount of money or to set the budget for next year. So in this case, it's just over $25 million. And then we break that down into a per pupil spending amount. This year, that's projected to be $11,430, about 2.5% higher than the current year. And that's also kind of bucking the statewide trends where we're, I think, anticipating 8% was the December 1 projection for an increase in spending. So coming in significantly below that. And we'll talk about that 11,430 number quite a bit in the upcoming slides.
Did we skip a slide, Courtney? Nope, I have it wrong. Are our board goals ahead of that one? Okay. So I'm going to talk about our board goals first. So in FNESU, we've been working towards 3 big board goals since 2022. And they're really focused on academic proficiency, ensuring that our students are proficient across all grade levels in all of our core academic areas. We're really focusing in on literacy. Literacy is the primary goal in that area, and we're really focused in on all students reading on grade level by the time they leave 3rd grade. So the other goals are focused on ensuring that when our students graduate from our school, that they are proficient in the skills they need to thrive in life beyond school. So those are students having the skills they need to be successful, whether they go to college, straight into career, whether they go to a trade school, or just life in general. And ensuring that students have the social emotional skills that they need in order to be self-aware and adaptable, empathetic, collaborative, and really have purpose in their life. A little glitch with our slides. I think we're back now. So I will just name that I grew up in the 70s, and when I was in school, the skills that our teachers were focused on teaching us were different than they were now, because we were entering a workforce that was looking for something really specific. The workforce at that time was looking for students who performed very well on academic content specifically, so reading, writing, mathematics, listening, speaking, those skills in particular. We're now in a world that has changed very significantly over the last several decades, but in particular the last 5. So there is data around the core skills in 2025 that the workforce is looking for in employees that are in candidates that are applying for work. So this data comes from the World Economic Forum, the Future of Jobs survey from 2024. So if we think back to those skills from the 1970s that employers might have been looking for, now in 2025, employers are looking for people who have really strong analytical thinking skills, they're resilient, they're flexible, they're agile, they have leadership skills, social influence, they're creative thinkers, and they're really motivated and self-aware. Those are the top 5 skills. So those are really essential skills because our workforce has changed significantly with artificial intelligence, and it is really adapting the way most businesses in our world are how they're thriving and how they're changing with time. So if you could go back, our students, we're trying to make sure that they have the skills that they need to be successful in careers that don't exist yet. So they need to have those inherently human skills that help them to succeed. So back in 2019 in FNESU, we began developing a portrait of a learner. This began as a document that the FNESU board asked us to work towards, and we engaged students on this work. And so we had a representative group of students from all 6 of our towns, from both of our middle high schools, and we had them come together with some facilitation to be able to identify what are the most important skills that students need to be successful in life beyond school. And they engaged with a lot of members from our community, workforce partners, higher ed. They did a lot of work on this, and they came up with these 7 characteristics. So they felt that it was really important that students leave school being trustworthy, emotionally intelligent, contributors, creative thinkers, information savvy, independent decision makers, and financially literate. And that aligns pretty well with what the newest research is saying about those human-centered skills that people need for success in life beyond school. So we're feeling like we're on a pretty solid path with our students. The reason that we are doing this work, you can see them visually there on this slide, is for our students, because we want to make sure that when they leave us, they have what they need in terms of skills to succeed, no matter what career they're choosing, no matter if they're starting their own business or they're going into the military or the workforce or the trades.
So some of the drivers for the change in the budget, and again, remembering we're about $260,000 over the current year budget. We've actually cut about 8.5 positions out of the budget, and those are spread out across 4 of the 5 schools. Despite that, the anticipated increase in health insurance alone is over $500,000. So the budget's only going up 260, but that line is up over $500,000. For just kind of a reality check, in FY18, a family plan cost $17,394. This year it's over $40,000. So it's increased over 235% across those 8 years. On the good side, we are anticipating more high school students from sending districts next year, so there'll be a little bit more tuition money coming in, or more kids with tuition coming in. And then a reduction of about just over $100,000 in the supervisory union assessment. And so that's the supervisory union budget that covers food service, special ed, us coming to these meetings. That's actually down for the Enosburg-Richford side. In terms of the staffing changes, there's one administrative assistant position that is vacant and is not being refilled at the middle school here in Enosburg. Handful of paraeducator positions, primarily at the elementary schools, that are vacant now and not being refilled. And then teaching positions are scattered across primarily the 2 high schools, mostly at Enosburg High School. And again, these are not people who are currently in those jobs. They're positions that we either haven't been able to fill over the last year or two, or that we've had a vacancy and decided that through scheduling we didn't need to keep them. We're also moving 2 full-time teachers and 1 part-time teacher out of the federal grants where they're currently housed this year into the local budget. And that is really a defensive move, knowing that those are positions that we need to keep, and that federal funding is very uncertain going out over the next few years. And so these 3 people moving in actually is part of that net of 8.5. So really we were cutting more than 8.5, but 3.5 were moving from another bucket of money.
I'll just add one thing there. Most of those positions were already cut last spring. They were just positions that we didn't fill last spring. And some of that came out of, we'll talk a little bit about class sizes that were mandated in legislation that was passed last year. So we made decisions about class sizes and staffing levels that we needed to operate in. So much of that has already happened.
So if you think about the total of that proposed budget, about 2/3 we spend on our people. So we spend on our salaries and our benefits. That's the bulk of really any school budget, and that's where most of the money is. This larger section for purchase services, there's some tuition payments there for pre-K kids or for kids going to other tech centers. A bunch of that is money that's coming to the supervisory union, again, for food service workers, for special educators primarily, and then shares of other staff members. And this green section, 4.5% up top, is the amount of money or the percent of the budget that we spend on things. So that's paper, that's crayons, that's supplies at the tech center, that's photocopying. And that's really a relatively small part of the budget. So we try to highlight that. I've had people in the past say if we only bought more pens in bulk, we would be able to save a whole bunch of money. Whenever we're talking about that, we're talking about this little tiny piece. Really what we do is we hire our own staff, and then we kind of rent out other people's staff. Next slide is the same budget. It's just broken out by what we do rather than what we buy. And the section that's coming up in green is kind of what we think of as traditional school. So this is teachers in front of kids in classrooms. And then the section in blue are the things that we do in support of that direct instruction. So we would have guidance counselors and nurses. We would have technology and professional development, the board. We've got your 5 principals and their staff. Got central services. Again, this is more the special ed food service where we come in. The cost for operating our 5 buildings, and then a little bit up top for transporting kids to and from school.
So this data reflects the per weighted pupil spending in all of the districts across the state of Vermont. So each of the lines in the larger portion of the visual represent the 119 districts in Vermont. So the red lines reflect our Franklin County partners. These 2 black lines, the top line is the statewide average in per weighted pupil spending. The bottom black line is the Franklin County average. And then the 2 blue lines at the bottom represent our 2 districts. So the higher line is Northern Mountain Valley, at 11,718. And then the bottom blue line represents Enosburg Richford at 11,139. That's for this current year. And what we know about this data is that the bottom, I believe it's the bottom 5 districts don't actually operate schools. Those are tuition-only districts. So there are not many schools this year that operate schools that spend less per weighted pupil. What we also know from looking at budgets across the state that have already been warned, if those budgets are approved at the levels that they are, there's only one other school that doesn't have a budget warned yet because they vote in April that could potentially fall below Enosburg Richford, but what is most likely to happen is Enosburg Richford will fall to either the lowest spending per weighted pupil of all the operating schools in the state, or it will be the second lowest. So I'm saying that just to highlight that we work very hard to be efficient with our spending plan, and I'm still proud of our work. I think that we're doing really good work here. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're using strategy and grit to try to find ways to support our students with opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have with a spending plan that looks like this. The one piece that I think is really challenging is that when we are competing with other districts in the state and we're looking at what we pay our educators, and we think about our budget, that's the majority of the budget, the spending plan is our staffing. It does get challenging when we have partners that are not far away from us that have about $5,000 more per weighted pupil that they can put towards their salaries. So I think that one of the most challenging things is we have a hard time paying competitive wages to compete with others that are spending that much more per weighted pupil under the current funding formula. Yes?
What's the base wage now? I was on the school board, years ago, so I'm just curious to see what the number is. The step
Next year,
one,
it's 52.5.
that's coming in.
That's for people we're hiring for next year.
No, quite a bit from the old days. I think it was 20-something.
That's about what, I think I started at 19 something way back when, but it's not keeping pace with the increases that others have gotten in the
No, just
area.
curious.
Yeah.
But that's been 20 years, I think.
Yeah. So this is the part where we get savvy to try to figure out how can we still bring opportunities to our students. And we have people that work for us that are really good go-getters to go out and try to find competitive grants. So here are just a few examples of how we've utilized competitive grants for our students' benefit. So we have this year received a couple more after-school program grants. So we already have a 5-year after-school program grant that is a substantial amount of money, and we were able to receive another grant for $533,141 to expand after-school programming. On the Enosburg side, in our Enosburg schools, we received the lottery grant, the Vermont Educate and Innovate grant, and that has allowed, Russ Lamontia wrote that grant. They've been able to purchase 3D printers, 3D scanners, a computer numerical control router. I'm not really sure what that is, but I think they're very excited about it, and computers to help with 3D modeling with students, so very technical experiences for our students to build skills that are pretty outstanding. So they received $15,000 for that. That's the second year of the Vermont Educate and Innovate grant. So there are 2 schools that received it in Vermont. Last year there were also 2 schools that received it in Vermont, and we were also one of them. Last year we received it for the Northern Mountain Valley District. The other piece that I'm very proud of is our first robotics team. So we had ESSER money that we received from the federal government after COVID. And one of the things we did was invest in some highly engaging resources to advance opportunities for our students that they've not ever really had. So we were able to start our first, or inaugural first robotics team. So we have a team of students that competed last year, once at UVM and once in the state of Maine. They had to build and design a robot from scratch to be able to complete a specific task. That was the task of the season. Last year, they had to have a robot that could pick up a tube from the ground and lift it up and place it onto this device in the middle of the competition rink. And then it's like competition, but you're also working with other students. So if you have an opportunity to look at our annual report online, if you click the link at the very bottom of this section, it brings you to a video of their competition last year, and it's really fun to see what the students are doing. So that's one way that we are strategically using our grant funding. The other thing I want to talk about is this year it's become clear to me that people don't really understand the difference between a supervisory union and a supervisory district. And I want to just talk about that for a moment because it has to do with how we staff our schools and the strategy we use behind that. So this is comparing FNESU with our neighbor down the road, Missisquoi Valley. So in FNESU, we have two separate districts. We're here tonight talking about the Enosburg-Richford district. That's our district that operates schools pre-K through 12th. Those students don't have high school choice. So on the NMV side, we have 4 pre-K through 8 schools that then tuition out their 9th through 12th students. So we can't be just one supervisory district because we don't have structures that match. So the only way we could have come together under Act 46 is if these towns in the NMV district would have agreed to give away their high school choice benefit. So because they didn't choose to do that, we have to have 2 separate entities for districts, and we need to maintain an SU structure. So it's a little more complicated for a variety of reasons. One is we're considered 3 separate employers. We have 3 separate budgets. We have 3 separate audits. So there's a lot of duplication of efforts, but it makes it harder for us to share human and physical resources across those districts because they all operate separate from one another. So that sometimes can be viewed as a barrier. In Missisquoi Valley, under the Act 46 merger, Sheldon was a pre-K 8 school that was merged into FNESU. Once that happened, all of their schools were part of a union agreement and they all went to their high school. So they had matching structures. So they now only have one board. So they have one board, one budget, one audit, and incredible flexibility in how they use their money in their budgets to support all of their schools. So even though the governance structure is a bit of a barrier, we're very strategic in what we do with that. So we have, because our schools are not heavily funded, we're looking at all of our positions through a really critical lens. And so what we've done is we have thought about what are the services that we provide to our students. One, sometimes in the past, some schools would have a service they could provide, and another school might not have anybody that they found to fill a position. So we weren't providing equitable services. So we look at contracting really differently now. We hold a lot more of the contracts that are kind of specialty contracts at the supervisory union level. So they work for us, and we could deploy them out to either district based on what the need is. Some examples of the positions that we hold that we do that with are emerging multilingual teachers, our instructional coaches, technology integration, all of our special educators, food service, and facilities. So we're able to, from our level, look and say, okay, we have this number of students that need emerging multilingual supports, and we can deploy that resource based on what the student need is. In the past, we would have the limit of this person works on the ER side, so that person can only work on ER even if all those students move over to NMV. So this strategy has allowed us to reduce the amount of people we have in those positions because we could be really data-driven and specific based on student need. So it's our workaround to a more complicated governance structure. The other piece I want to talk about is I think that people have a lot of questions about our alternative programs in FNESU. So we have 2 types of alternative programs. All of our alternative programs are housed here in Enosburg because they're central to all 6 of our towns. And we have one alternative program that supports students who have significant developmental disabilities. That's called RISE. We have a big RISE and a little RISE. We also have an alternative program that houses students who have more intensive behavioral challenges, and those programs are called STEPS, big steps and little steps. So we've always had students that have had intensive needs that are significant enough where you can't really meet their needs within the general education classroom. And historically, we have had to say, where is there a program nearby that we can tuition to so that they can best meet the needs of those students? So if today we were to decide that we had a student that had a really significant challenge and they needed to go to an out-of-district placement, the range of tuition per student would be between $100,000 and $150,000 per pupil. On top of that tuition, you also have to pay per pupil transportation costs, and that range is between $40,000 and $60,000. So here I put some stars on the map that kind of representative of regions of the state where we have sent students in the past. We don't do that anymore. We've figured out how to create our own and sustain our own programs in our communities, which allows us not only to better meet their needs here and provide a supported return to the regular ed classroom where that's appropriate. We've had a lot more success in reintegrating students since we've been doing this locally. When we look at the total cost, including everything, including transportation for those programs, this year we spent $47,000 per pupil. So significantly lower. Next year, we're projecting that it could be as high as $60,000 if we could fill the positions that we have open. And we have not been able to fill all of our positions this year, so that's why there's a range. So I have seen questions about that in our community, and I wanted to make sure that people were really clear about this. It's not only a benefit to our students, it's also a benefit to our taxpayers because we are doing this much more financially efficient by doing it in-house. And I will say that our programs, we've shared our programs, we've presented at the state level multiple times now, and I think we're getting close to 10 or 12 districts across the state that have actually come to observe what we're doing in alternative programs and are trying to build their own alternative programs.
What's the instructor that you're looking for to work in these programs? Is it just a teacher or a special educator, or?
It varies. Board certified behavior analysts, that's one position that's difficult to fill. Clinician is difficult to fill. Special educators, difficult to fill. What am I missing? Speech and language, also difficult to fill. So
It's not just one
no.
type.
Yeah. All right.
So now we're going to get into some math, and I will say at the top that everything that you see here tonight is on our website at the FY27 budget page, and there's actually a lot more detail on the website, so some of the numbers behind these numbers are available there as well. Again, we are asking for permission to spend just about $25.5 million next year, an increase of about 1%. We know that we're going to get over $6 million in income, or we're anticipating over $6 million in income. Much of that's coming in grants tied to the tech center. The lion's share is tuition payments coming from kids from other districts who are going to high school at our two high schools. We also know that we've got $336,000 in the bank left over from FY25 that we plan to put towards this budget. And so if we take the budget and that money we know we have, we come up with a figure just under 19 million, which is the amount of money that we need from the state, assuming this budget is passed, to operate the schools. So when the budget's passed, I will contact the state and I'll say, we're expecting this amount of money from you next year. That amount of money is about 1/4 comes from residential property tax somewhere in the state. The remaining 3/4 is split pretty evenly between non-residential property tax from somewhere in the state and other funding streams like sales tax, meals tax, lottery, some Medicaid money. But this figure, this 18.8 million, is what's called education spending, and that's the number that we use divided by our student count to get that per pupil spending amount, that 11,430, which you're going to see on the warning. You'll see here that we're counting 1,653.28 students. We do not have that many students in our schools. This is a weighted figure, so we start probably around 800 or 900, and then we get to count more for certain categories of students. So the state knows that kids who live in poverty cost more to educate. They require more resources. Kids who don't hear English spoken at home require more resources. And so that number gets inflated, and this is for every district in the state, and goes up to come up with a weighted average, and that's how we calculate a per pupil amount. Up in Franklin Northeast, in both districts, we see a big bump up for poverty because of the demographics up here. You'll see different movement in different parts of the state based on those different categories. So again, that $11,430 per pupil spending is how we compare ourselves to other districts in the state, and it's also the figure that drives the residential property tax amount. That number is divided by what's called the dollar yield, which is a number that the legislature sets in probably June of this year, and that's a number that they calculate to make sure that they raise enough money from the residential property tax as well as the other taxes in order to pay all of these bills here. So all of those past budgets across the state are going to come with a bill for the state. Right now, we are using the December 1st tax commissioner proposed yield amount. We know that will be wrong. What we are hearing is that the yield is going to be significantly higher, one, based on how some of those other revenue streams are doing, and two, based on the governor offering $75 million in one-time money to push that number up or to drive down the tax rate. The legislature seems excited about accepting that amount of money. He's trying to tie it to some governance changes at the school district level. So we'll see where that goes. But if the yield bill was passed out today, this $1.29 district-wide tax rate, which is what we're projecting now, would be about 7 cents lower. So we think this is by far the worst-case scenario, and that number is going to come down between now and June.
How do they come up with the poverty numbers? Is it still Medicaid, or was it Medicaid, like the after-school program that
Yeah.
I used to work with?
It's driven primarily by what's called the direct certification list, which are families who are receiving SNAP benefits or a couple other benefit programs. So that's the big
That's
driver.
tied to the school, they know who?
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yeah. And so this district level tax rate of $1.29 is actually, it's about a half a penny down from last year, which would be great if that's where the story ended. But we have to take that district-wide tax rate and we apply what's called the common level of appraisal, which is a number calculated by the tax department for every town in the state. And that is meant to ensure that property taxpayers across the state are paying their fair share or paying what the fair market value of their property is as opposed to what's on their tax bill. We see a pretty big divergence in these two towns. Enosburg's common level of appraisal is 86%, which is actually driving that $1.29 up to $1.49. This is largely because it's been a long time since Enosburg's had a reappraisal. In Richford, they reappraised 2 years ago, I think, and so their CLA is actually above 100%, 128. So that $1.29 is actually going to go down to $1 for Richford. And again, this is before that anticipated change, which we think will push both of them down pretty significantly. On the next slide, you can kind of see another version of how that CLA works. So if you're in Enosburg and you look at your property tax bill and it says $200,000 for your appraisal, the state actually thinks that that property is worth $329,000. In Richford, that $200,000 is actually only $221,000. And again, that's because Richford has recently gone through a townwide reappraisal. And then on the next slide, you'll see those two rates diverging. You can see here from FY23 to 24 is when Richford went through their reappraisal. So their tax rate dropped pretty significantly. We'd anticipate in Enosburg when that reappraisal is final, and I think it may have started, or they're trying to contract for it, I'm not sure. But we think that that's probably coming in the next year or two. And then that'll drop down and be a lot closer to where Richford's is.
I think the important thing to remember is it will drop down, but it is going to be a lower tax rate on a higher valued property. So it isn't going to feel like you have a much smaller tax bill. And I think that's what Richford felt when they dropped down to 86 cents. It didn't feel like they were paying less because of property values.
Because that number went from 200 to 300 and they're 400, whatever it was. Exactly. We're anticipating that almost everybody who pays based on income will see a decrease this year. And so if you're earning less than $115,400 as a household, you are potentially eligible for an income sensitivity credit. For folks who are paying based on the full value of their home, increases of different amounts across the two towns. And again, this is assuming that December 1 yield and not what we think the actual yield will end up at.
So you have likely heard about Act 73. There are several changes that are embedded in that law. Here are a few that we'll be contending with. So by next July 1, 2027, we are supposed to have a sense of what statewide graduation requirements will look like. So the agency, they had the first phase of this. They had to make a recommendation to the State Board of Education, and now they have around 18 months to take testimony from around the state around feedback related to what those statewide graduation requirements should look like. Those would be for the class of 2031. They also, the Agency of Education has to be working towards a statewide calendar. They're expected by July 1, 28, so that would be the 28-29 school year, to have a calendar that is the same across the state. That actually is quite hard. Vermont superintendents have been working for, this is our second year now, to try to align those calendars across the state, and we've gotten very close. We're not exactly aligned yet, but much closer than we've ever been. Another piece of the legislation that changed during Act 73 is the number of schools that could receive tuition, Vermont tuition dollars, decreased significantly. So through the public high school choice, students now cannot take those dollars out of state, and the number of in-state programs that are eligible to receive it declined significantly last year because there was a threshold that had to be met in terms of the number of students that were enrolled with public tuition dollars during the last school year. Also, as part of Act 73, I tipped to this a little earlier, we now have class size minimums across Vermont. So this is making it so it's a lot of pressure on some of the very small schools. They will not be able to meet these class size minimums. So the way they approached it in the education quality standards is that there's a specific minimum number for grade bands. So you could see they're listed here from first grade through high school, ranging from 10 to 18 students minimums. They put something in here so that if some of these small schools have combined 2, 3, 4 classrooms to be able to get to the minimum, you can't actually do that anymore. In this law, you can't combine more than 2 grade levels to get to these minimums. We are being monitored for that now. So Nate knows, as one of the leaders here, we're watching our class sizes very carefully, and we've corrected some of the staffing levels to get down to the right class size as best we can across our schools. But if over the course of 3 years we're not meeting minimum class size requirements, then the State Board of Education, based on the Agency of Education recommendations, can take any of the following actions. So they could require a school to receive technical assistance from the Agency of Education. They could say this supervisory union or district is too small to function alone, so they could adjust your boundary. They could assume control of a school. They could close a school, or they could require further district consolidation. So these are already currently in law. So even if the district consolidation doesn't end up coming to fruition, it's already in law. So you're hearing in the news that there are schools that are in communities that are making moves related to operating those schools. That has to do with class size minimums, and it also has to do with steps they're taking in anticipation of the new way we fund schools through Act 73, which Morgan will talk about.
How do the para-educators fit into this? Like, you have other people besides, you're talking 10 kids for one teacher.
Yeah, this is really about the number in a classroom. So it's confusing because what the governor proposed last year was more ratio based. So it was X number per teacher, or
Okay.
you know, so many school counselors per so many nurses. But we didn't go with that formula
Okay.
through the legislative session. So right now they're just very focused on class sizes. But where that does play in though is what can you afford when the foundation formula goes into play. So you can imagine in that visual that I shared with you, for us in Franklin Northeast, the number they floated is 13.5. That would feel like we have a lot of opportunity to think about, and if any issue, if we were able to go up to that level. For those other systems that are really high, some is because of spending and some is because they've lost a lot of students. So they're having to make tough decisions to be prepared to operate within that realm of funding.
So as we think about the class size minimums, it's also good to remember, one, that we as a region are not seeing the same declines as the rest of the state. And on the other side, the Northern Mountain Valley side, we have some schools that feel like they're pretty small, but even those schools our smallest has almost 100 schools in Vermont that are smaller than it is. So the focus is not really necessarily on us. The thing that's getting the most press around Act 73 is the governance changes. And so in theory, the legislature will draw new maps and pass them out by July 1st, drawing new district lines. These would consolidate districts and superintendencies and not schools yet. So there'd be fewer of Lynn, there'd be fewer of me in the state. But the goal is to create structures that can then look at schools and those small schools. The legislature created a task force to bring them 3 maps that they could use as starting points for this session. The task force declined to do that, and so they're frankly scrambling to figure out where to start out. And we have not seen any maps yet as of the last time I checked in.
What's your feeling on the one that we all saw from the governor? I think there were 6, maybe 5 or 6 districts.
I don't think that gets through the legislature. Yeah. I think the law, Act 73, talked about districts between 4,000 and 8,000 kids. The Superintendent's Association has brought forward research and brought that to the committee, saying it really should be between 2,000 and 4,000. So up here, we're at about 2,000 kids. MVU's at about 2,000 kids, so that's 4,000 together. Maple Run's about 4,000 kids, so that would be 8,000. All pretty doable depending on the direction they go, if they take a direction. They also are going to be creating voting wards for these new school boards. So setting what towns would be together or what communities would be together in terms of voting for school board members and what those boards would look like. With the theory that the board would be elected in November of 2027, and those new districts would be running the schools starting July 2028 or 7 months later. So you have 7 months to convene the board, get some board goals, get a plan for them, then hire a superintendent, then hire central office staff. Presumably you have the school staff already. Get all your policies in place. And so we think that the timeline is wholly unrealistic the way it's set up. But I don't think there's any room to talk about that until we see a map. Along with that change in governance is a change in the funding formula. So this right now is contingent on new maps being drawn. There is some talk in the legislature about pulling this out and just pushing it forward anyway, from folks who don't think maps are going to be drawn. But as we talked about earlier, under current law, you, the voters, get to pass whatever budget you want, and the state is required to come up with that money. Under a foundation formula or an educational opportunity payment, which is what it's referred to in the law, the state is going to say, you're going to get this much money per weighted kid, and you have to live within that budget. If you spend that much, you don't have to go to the voters for approval. There'll be a little bit of room if you feel like you need to spend more. But if you think about where we are on that statewide chart, any number that's going to get passed through the legislature is going to mean more money for our district. Unless there's significant cost savings in those high spending districts, it's also likely going to be a tax rate increase as well for us, unless they find some other pockets of money for it. There are also changes to the income sensitivity piece, and there's also a split now in the non-homestead grand list. So in theory, in the future, the legislature could choose to tax second homes more than businesses or farms or camps or what have you.
How are they looking at changing the income sensitivity?
It's kind of a longer conversation. It seems like it's going to be a little bit simpler. It would happen the same year rather than a year behind. And as I understand it, they would look at your income level and they would take your property value and say, okay, we're going to discount your property value based on your income level. The other money article that you will have in front of you at town meeting is looking for authorization to take half of the money left over from the 24-25 school year and putting it into a capital reserve fund. This is one that we ask for every year, different dollar amounts or different percentage. But this is money that we've already raised and looking to set that aside for some of the larger capital needs that we have in our 5 buildings. We've got some asbestos abatement in our 2 elementary schools that that we would like to take care of in the next few years. There's a pause on PCB testing in the state, and the pause was put in place before Enosburg High School was tested, so that's also a big unknown.
What did you say they were testing for in the elementary?
We have asbestos in both elementary schools, and so we're trying to abate that. The testing is for PCBs. Cold Hollow was negative, Richford High School was negative, and we had one room in Enosburg Elementary that had a slightly elevated level, and we took care of that.
It was below the threshold, but it was too close to the threshold. They made us take care of that.
Yeah.
Richford
then-
Elementary was also clean.
Was also clean.
Yeah.
So the big question is Enosburg High School, and it's a building that's had many different iterations and many different building projects. So one would expect that there's going to be some materials in there in one of those versions.
Wasn't Morgan 336 used in the income?
The other half is used as income.
Oh,
So
the other half,
the
it wasn't
leftover
that.
money is actually twice that. We're asking for half of it
Okay.
to go into capital reserves, and then half of it would buy down the tax rate.
Okay, oh, okay.
And then voting day is March 3rd this year here in Enosburg. It's at the Public Safety Building starting at 10. Early voting starts on February 11th, and you can do that either at the town clerk's office or call and request a ballot be mailed, or pick up a ballot and mail it back. Keep in mind that mail takes a lot longer now than it did a few years ago in Vermont. And you can also register to vote the same day. So if folks tell you that they're not registered, you can tell them they can correct that as well. And unless there are any questions, that's what we've got for you.
Already asked online.
Do we have any questions online, Courtney? I think we can start transitioning to Nate, and if there's any questions, we can shift to it.
So it's the best part is I get to kind of highlight what's going on in and around Cold Hollow. So I'm going to kind of take you through the things that we do here. A variety of pictures. First thing we do is the first highlight is what we probably focus on the most. And that is next slide. Employability works. So we are always focusing on dependability, self-direction, communication, critical thinking, and relationship building. Celebrate that. Probably about every 6 weeks. There's some winners separate from next one. And that's the afternoon program. Not everybody gets an award, you'll see, so it's definitely earned. And then we'll just walk you through I'll just flash this one. That work. This is just pictures of what's going on in our classrooms. From September to now, obviously our forestry students are in the woods hacking when it's not below zero. They are so working on forestry competition tomorrow.
You still have the sugar recipe?
Not at boards anymore. So we have our log landing up behind. We have about 90 acres of land, about 2,000 taps and.
Oh, you do half up there?
Yep. Sugar out, put that sugar out.
I've never been.
Yep. So we'll be doing tours when they do the Vermont Maple open up again.
Okay.
So medical careers, working with the mannequins, and I mean they're working hard. They do college level work on a daily basis. On the one, they do everything from brake, oil changes, tires, and this is about them taking apart engines and then putting them back together.
This person but talking.
The feature is pretty straightforward.
It's really a good program.
It really is. It's always full. Human Services working with NCSS. Again, this is you can have this if you want, but it's
Do you get college credit for this
yes.
at your school?
Yep. Human Services, I think they're at 6 college credits, medical careers 12, and 6 in business. And downstairs classes, they don't have any college credits transferable, but they do get college courses waived when they go to state. So like somebody else
CC or
they come in with course.
you get IRCs.
Right, and they do get IRCs. Business leadership doing their thing. And again, they run a store, construction, built some hunting shacks, some sheds, so there was some hunting shacks. A lot of students there, so taking on one big project has been difficult, so doing multiple little projects.
Did you get rid of the whole?
We did.
I don't know if you.
So they done it, re-plumbed it and redid the electrical. About as much as they could do in the procurement board we got. This next thing we really stress is perfect attendance. So just Q2 presented last week. So these are students that earn perfect attendance for Q2. And our seniors in the afternoon, not so many, but that's all right. And some of those are rejected. So we had to be senioritis might be cutting in. And Q2 falls during a lot of the hunting season. So we can have attendance. We just did our student survey. So far we have 102 responses. I'm not sure if that's all we're gonna get, but we're hoping for about 20 more. But I only highlighted a few of these, but I'm very proud of these. So my program teacher tweeted us 102 responses. 100%. Students treats teachers and staff with respect. 99%. We're not perfect there. And then the one that probably is something that I think we work very hard here is, do you feel like you're a member of the Cold Hollow community? Have all of our students say. So that's just something that we work hard on building that community. That once you're here, you want us to take care of you.
You can feel it when you walk around here.
Yeah. So what else we got? So it's just some more day in the life of what's going on. In this case, they are earning their art proficiency by making and designing wreaths that they then turn around and sell to raise money for their programs. So
I bought one last year, but I didn't
Yeah. So yeah, they moved their sales to Tractor Supply because Tractor Supply.
Okay, I've got it up here.
Yep. And they are a big supporter of FFA, so they let us set shop up there. We had 10, 15 kids there all day on Saturday selling.
I bet they sold to do it.
Yep, we did. Business Leadership runs a nonprofit clothing store, which all the clothes are free, and so that makes high school, so students can go in there and get what they need.
I remember Sarah collecting.
Yep, she just put a call out for prom dress for prom season. The other thing that happens a lot here is we have guest speakers come in, either colleges or from industry. Here's representative staff on from Andy with Eric Toyota that had Subaru come in. They come in and speak to our students about careers in the field. We partner with North Country Federal Credit Union. They come in and they do a financial reality fair. So students get a job and they start making money, and then they have to go make a bunch of financial decisions. And they realize that $20 an hour might not be able to get everything they want to get. Have that brand new truck, house payment, and the stuff all with family.
And the grocery.
And the grocery bill. So
and
it's
health
a
insurance. How about that one?
it's a rude awakening, and they realize that, and when they see it, when we have students come back and start talking about their experience in the workforce, 90% are like, yeah, I'm making money, but I'm living at home. So it's very hard for kids to
There's a lot of that.
find
More
a
than it
place.
used to be.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's where they're starting to learn some of that budgeting and like, all right, what do I need to do to get?
Mhm.
And then the other thing that we do is we do a lot of field trips. So this is automotive at RPM Racing in Georgia. We've got construction down at Vermont Timber Frames.
Where's that start?
Yeah, we're learning about those careers. And these are just a few of where our students go. This is students at the new ABC Vermont Construction Academy in Rimouski, or people in the industry to send their employees back to school to learn these things. And Automaster and VIP Tires, they also go to Heritage. They get out and about, so it's just great to go to these places, make those connections, get the person's card, and then when you graduate, you're like, I'm looking for a job, and then you get to their portfolio. They have cards of 15 people saying, "If you need a job, come back." So it's really, I think that's a good benefit for our students. Some of our data that we are required to report on, we have a working assessment, and you'll see that our workplace document score, we were at 35%, statewide rates at 47%. We met our target, our negotiated target. We're still not as high as the state in reading regards. However, if you look at math, and that's where we've probably spent most of our focus, our students are at 62%, the statewide rate was at 55%. So I think that attributes to Aaron Brophy, our special needs coordinator, just go to the classroom. That's an intervention. So that work's paying off as we're looking at trying to figure out how we can.
Is it true that maybe many of the students that come here are not, top of the class academically?
Very true. Very true. Yep. And nor do they like to read.
Yeah.
So it's not. I would say that they're not necessarily good at this, but when you have to read for an hour and a half, passage after passage, and they don't see the need, what the benefit of taking this test, they're going to give us that quick.
Can I push back a little bit on that? Because I think decades ago, most kids looked at this as a different option to work and go to college. But we do have a ton of students who are at the top of their class
Absolutely.
that come here. You have a grad that just completed the program at Yale from, they
Both reading goals for both schools. Annabelle's in medical career, Tristan did a year business. So absolutely, it's the
You must know
There's a
the
constituent
students that, right, I mean, I know that we're talking about even Tech, remember?
Yes.
How many years ago it was like,
But that's why I wanted to say.
no,
that
I'm
because
aware
I think-
of that, but I wondered if still the numbers showed that maybe people struggled in that area is what I'm trying.
Yeah, I think it's across the board. I think we have students that have not had traditional success in high school
Right.
and they find success here. And we find those that have aced their high school, they come over here and they find success here as well.
Right, but I'm just wondering in the reflection of the numbers.
All right, what else we got going on at Colvalo? So yeah, the college visits. So again, this is Otto down at White Mountain Community College, and they got to hear from two people on the right, two former graduates, to come in and speak to the other students about their experience. Medical careers at Dartmouth, learning about the careers at Dartmouth Hitchcock. We also do, like we talked about, the industry recognized credentials. So they medical one doing their CPR AED on both babies and adults. We have people from industry come in and do testing for these. So in this case, we have the Department of Transportation. Those are all those gentlemen that you see there. Putting our kids to the ringer to make sure that they are certified to do Vermont state inspections.
Can you inspect hers in the shop?
We don't.
Okay.
We probably could, but then there's some extra liability if something does go wrong.
That's great.
The other program quality measures that we are held to based on our federal grants are programs who get post-secondary credentials. You'll see that 68% of our students received the tier 2 credentials. Statewide average is 72%, so we're below statewide average. But again, in all of these, we hit our negotiated targets. Credits, you'll see that 52% of our students got college credit. College credit statewide average, let's get to 1%. So we're right where we want to be there and continue to try to increase that. And then students who do work-based learning, that's probably one of our, we have a lot of great employers that take our students on. And not just there, we have kids going all over Newport working with MEI and PC construction. I think we got a kid over at St. John working. So that's a great program for us. We have 58% of our students are doing that statewide as 24. We have Skills USA competition that's coming up soon. We have 31 students taking that on, and some of you may have bought raffle tickets to support those guys going to Burlington, PTC, and Camp Johnson to participate in a variety of competitions. And the guidance counselors at this high school always ask graduating seniors what's some advice that you want to give freshmen, and many times it's go to CHCC. So that is it in a nutshell for you guys to get to your meeting on time. You guys have questions?
It was informational, it's very informative. I like it. I'm a fan of this place.
Yes.
And I was before my son worked here.
Yeah.
You have been into the kids go in the next semester? No. I'm actually not on the board. Oh, yes, you. Oh, good. Yes, perfect. Right. You're running again and you
We're good to sign off.
Yes. Right, I'm
Down to
experienced,
nobody
I was
else.
on the screen here many times, and FNESU was different back then. Right. But, all good stuff.
Story goes on with the pictures.
Really good. I will think about this together.